I am going to give you 3 facts about the Canadian securities industry focused on retail investors, and then I'm going to introduce my panel. So fact number 1, Canadians are increasingly dependent on their private savings for income in retirement. About this time last year, CPP Investments did a survey, and they found that 2/3 of 28 to 44-year-olds are feeling that they are not going to have enough money in retirement. And the CPP Investments folks found that investors increased their retirement savings goal from $700,000 to $900,000 that year. So almost 30% increase in what people feel they need in a 12-month period. People are nervous. Fact number 2, we are facing a large transfer of wealth coming up here from aging baby boomers to the next generation. And at the same time, younger investors, so those under 35, are stepping away from traditional investment advisory channels. They are embracing the digital DIY, do-it-yourself channels. They are looking to unregulated financial influencers or finfluencers and other social media sources of information for investing. And their risk appetite is high. Over 50% of the under 35s have invested in cryptocurrency. And the younger part of that cohort are very interested in online sports betting as a way to spend their money instead of investing. So fact number 3, in Canada, we have a highly concentrated market structure. This year, Institutional Shareholder Services, or ISS, reported that 27 brokerage firms in Canada, and that's out of 247 brokerage firms, so about 10%, have 96% of retail brokerage assets under administration. And of those 27 firms, the big 6 banks, their broker affiliates, are estimated to have from 70 to 80% share of the retail assets. And on that note, to my left, I have Andy Mitchell. Andy is president and CEO of the Securities and Investment Management Association. We call them SEMA. SEMA represents roughly 150 brokerage dealers, investment fund managers, and the service industry that supports the investment fund managers. And notably, for purposes of this conversation, SEMA's membership includes the big 6 bank, dealer, and investment management affiliates. But in the DIY channel, also known as the online or discount brokerage channel, also known as the order execution only or OEO channel by many names, the non-big 6 firms or independents are challenging the incumbents. Newcomers to the DIY channel have more than doubled their retail assets under administration and now do 60% of the trading on the DIY platform. And the firm that has performed number 1 in trades and trade growth over the last 2 years, in 2023 and 2024, is Wealthsimple. They have ranked number 1 in average account size growth and asset growth in the last 2 or 3 quarters. And on that note, to my left is Blair Wiley, Chief Legal Officer of Wealthsimple. Now, in late 2024, the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization, or CIRO, they are Canada's national self-regulatory organization, or SRO. They are responsible for overseeing investment dealers, mutual fund dealers, and trading activity on Canada's debt and equity marketplaces. And they also have 2 crypto trading platforms in their membership, one of whom you heard from earlier today. Anyways, in late 2024, CIRO did an investor survey to inform their OEO guidance that they released this summer. And one point of information caught my eye. That was that the investors who were 65 plus beat out all the other age categories in the financial literacy test in that survey, except for mutual fund fees, but they can be forgiven for that because they're very complicated. And on that note, on the screen is Laura Tamblyn-Watts, President and CEO of CanAge, Canada's national seniors advocacy organization working to improve the lives of older Canadians through advocacy, policy, and community engagement. And Laura is also a director of the board at Zero. So before I start asking our panel some questions, I have a question for the audience. And you can get into the app there. We can act like the under 35s and use our phones to do our voting. Curious as to how many of you are DIY investors, how many have advisors, how many have a DIY account and an advisor. Or other. Maybe you just bought a house and you don't have any money to invest, so you're paying off a mortgage. The CSA, the Canadian Securities Administrators, this is the umbrella organization under which all 13 securities commissions in the country operate in order to harmonize the law and the interpretation of the law in the securities realm. So this year, the CSA, and it just released the investor survey this month, it showed that there are about 33% of Canadians that are DIY only, 12% that are DIY plus advisor. We call you the hybrid cohort, and you are the most confident cohort. And advisor only, roughly 50%. Of investors in Canada. So these are a wee bit different. Lots of hybrid investors in the room, so lots of confidence. So with that information, it's critical that securities industry delivers the services that Canadian investors need across the spectrum of age, wealth, and financial literacy. And so today I hope to explore with the panel the current and future states of the Canadian investment industry. Okay, I'm gonna start with you, Andy. And can everyone see Laura? Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, good. Okay, I'm gonna start with Andy. So Andy, CIMA has been quite prolific this year. You've had a couple of reports and op-eds published. One of them is called Canada's Retirement Puzzle: Why Private Savings Must Be at the Center of Reform. So what is industry doing and what needs to be done to help investors save for retirement?
We need a couple hours to deal with that, but so the study, first of all, is the first of many focused on retirement and savings going forward from CIMA. You'll hear a lot more from us. Lynn, you mentioned CPP. Most Canadians would know their CPP, or if you're in Quebec, QPP. Canadians have saved, through all of their savings, $4.5 trillion in assets. The trustee pension plans in Canada are just over a trillion, sorry. So Canadians have saved 4x the pension plans that are out there supporting their retirement. So why do private savings matter? That's why they matter, because without private savings, Canadians will not be able to retire with the right retirement income. In the last 10 years, we've gone from 36% of Canadian retirees using their income for the retirement income, or 36% of their income coming from their private savings, to almost 50% now. Obviously, provincial governments, federal governments are struggling with their own finances. They're not going to be able to fund retirement for Canadians and global investors as well. So private savings matter more than ever. We've made some recommendations to the federal government, which we hope to see some of them come to fruition in a couple of weeks. If you heard Mr. Carney speak last night, he teased us a little bit with some of these ideas, so we'll see where it takes us. I also want to make sure we all attend these events. I go to many, not only in Canada, but across the globe with some of our international associations. And we tend to sit up in these panels and only talk about the challenges and the obstacles to success. I think we should all also not applaud literally, but applaud our industry in Canada. We punch way above our weight globally. We mentioned in the first couple of panels the size of our country, not only the scale geography-wise, but number of citizens, the amount of savings we have, the amount of advised accounts, the amount of fintech that supports good, solid advice, we are way above every jurisdiction in the world, including all the European countries, including the UK, by the way. It gets a lot of recognition. Our assets are higher as a percentage of population. So we have to step back sometimes and also not be complacent, as we heard from Mr. Johnson for sure this morning, but also applaud where we are and where we've come. And that's with collaboration and cooperation across the board. The CSA, now CIRO, and the industry itself working together. So I just wanted to get that out there as my political soapbox this morning before we get into some more of the details. I just always want to refer to my notes so I get these things right, but private savings, just to give you some perspective, have contributed about $150 billion to Canada's GDP in 2023 and about $27 billion in tax revenue. So we take those numbers to Ottawa and make sure they're understanding. I talked about the $4.5 trillion in private savings, and we've helped the government save $16.5 billion in GIS payments to Canadians because of their own private savings done through the industry.
And GIS
Yeah.
is?
Guaranteed income supplement. So you'd have CPP, OAS, and then for those that are more struggling, more vulnerable, they get GIS payments as top-ups. So if they can save a bit more themselves and we can encourage that savings, they'll be able to deliver and make sure they can live into retirement. And don't forget, we're all look around the room, we're all living a lot longer and working a lot longer. Age expectancy is about 10 years higher than 20 years ago. So we need a longer curve to get through that retirement. So our recommendations really quickly here to our paper, which we've shared with both the Finance Minister's office and the PMO's office, is threefold. Modernize retirement rules, so allow for the RSP to RIF conversion to move from age 71 to 73. It doesn't sound like a huge scope, but 2 years extras of savings could relate to 4 more years of retirement income, which is huge. Also, introduce flexible RIF withdrawals. So as you know, when you have a RIF account, you have to take certain withdrawals out per year, prescribed rates depending on the size of your account. 75% of RIF accounts in Canada are under $200,000. It's not a lot of money to live for savings, but people are forced to take out a certain amount. We're recommending to get rid of that mandatory withdrawal. Just think about a down market. I know we haven't had many in the last number of years, but if you have a really negative market and you're a retiree that's not living paycheck to paycheck, but managing their budget strictly, and they have to take money out of their income plan when the income is down, not a great scenario. Just gives them a little bit more flexibility. I think we should reward retirees that have worked very hard to put that savings into place and give them a little more flexibility. The other one, a little more sensitive from a tax perspective, but is about leveling the playing field, eliminating GST and HST on investment funds. You're probably not aware that mutual funds and ETFs pay GST and HST. We should be removing that. Why does that level the playing field? Securities don't pay that. And now, with the entrance of more and more US-based product listed securities coming into Canada, they also don't pay that. And we have a big intrusion of asset flows going into those products. So it's not level set, and the Canadian government's not earning anything off of that. It also helps to reduce regulatory friction. I was really pleased to see here, Stan, your comments this morning. Thank you very much with the national regulator, because we totally agree with you. One of the things we'd like to do is talk about costs in the system and try and harmonize those as well as the rules, and we're working towards that with the CSA and the federal government. And then expanding access to financial advice. So through the Wealthsimples of the world and other opportunities to leverage technology to serve a broader Canadian investment base is very, very integral, and the rules and regulation have to support that to make sure all Canadians are advised where they want to be advised. Not necessarily with an advisor all the time or the hybrid we saw from the stats, but make sure we meet them where they are from a perspective around hyper-personalization. And then the last two things, a little bit harder to achieve and not necessarily regulation-wise, but encouraging auto-enrollment in workplace savings plans. This has been encouraged in the EU, and savings have increased substantially. As you know, right now in group RSP plans and employer plan, opt-out is the first choice. When new employees come on board to get the youth investing earlier when they start their career is auto-enrollment in. They can always opt out by choice, but if we auto-enroll them in the workplace savings, it just encourages a stronger savings discipline. And then the last one, and this could be 2 panels in itself, is encourage financial literacy. We are very, very unique in Canada as a developed country not to have financial education and financial literacy at the federal level It is a provincial jurisdictional item. It's not consistent across the country. Youth is not being educated properly, and we're seeing that in the flaws, including, Lynn, you mentioned sports gambling. It's a real significant problem. Not that that's the only thing to tackle, but even tax-free savings accounts today, 62% of tax-free savings accounts are cash. That doesn't make any sense when you're trying to drive tax-free savings, but you're parking in cash, you're losing money after inflation. So we're not educating the Canadian populace to be better investors themselves, and that can be addressed through financial literacy and better financial education.
Well, thank you. Lots of advice there. I'm going to go take some action myself after this panel is done. Blair, how does DIY investing fit into retirement planning? And what is Wealthsimple doing to encourage people to invest more and more prudently?
Yeah, well, you first off, thanks for having us. It's great to be in Calgary here at with the Alberta Securities Commission and industry here in Calgary in Western Canada. We think that DIY investment is a critical, plank or pillar of a holistic country orientation around investing and savings. The reality is that the DIY investing is both, it serves investors across the spectrum. Certainly there are very sophisticated and experienced investors, maybe who've had careers in finance, who feel very confident to make their own retirement plans. But there are also first-time young Canadian investors who are trying to find a way into the market and get comfortable with a market that they hear about. It's more and more common to talk about investing in the Mag 7 companies and just the overall growth of investing. Certainly the pandemic and meme stocks was this moment where people started to really pay attention more to trading and investing than ever before. We think that having a simple and low friction way for Canadians to start their investing journey in a way that's not intimidating and actually welcomes participation is really, really important. When Wealthsimple began more than 10 years ago, we started out as a robo-advisor, which was this idea that we would help Canadians start their financial journey without any of the high costs of advice, without any of the minimum account sizes that many large wealth management firms impose on their advisors, where anyone could open an account with as little as $1, and we would do it for them. We would open up the account, we would put them in a balanced portfolio of ETFs, and they wouldn't have to think about it. And we thought this would be like the most low risk way for Canadians to feel comfortable with investing for the first time. And it was very popular particularly with young Canadians. But when we launched our do-it-yourself investing product about 5 years later, we were so surprised to learn that many young Canadians said, I'm not ready yet for a managed account, and I actually need to learn this by doing it myself. I need to actually open this account, buy that stock of Microsoft or whatever other company, RBC, and see what happens as it goes up and down, learn through the actual doing. And maybe I will eventually graduate into having an advised relationship, someone doing it for me. Sort of counterintuitive, but actually when you think about it, it sort of makes sense. It's kind of crawl, walk, run. And we've really, as a company, responded by trying to support investors through their investment journey by giving them all sorts of education. We have a weekly newsletter that's really well read. It's read by more than 1 million Canadians every week, about financial news, about how the economy is performing. We've been super supportive of the CSA and CIRO in their efforts to enhance the OEO rules to allow for platforms like Wealthsimple to provide more information to clients, to help them on their investment journey. And we think that this is just a critical piece of the long-term plan for Canadians in investing. The only thing I would say before I end my remarks on this point, I really liked all of the statistics that you mentioned at the top, Lynn. I think one more that we should all be aware of is that for young Canadians in particular, and for all Canadians, if you think about one of the critical assets that people hold in their lifetime that is a big part of their wealth, it's often historically been the home. And you think about people who will take out a mortgage as a person in their 20s, pay it off over 25 years, and at the end of it, they'll have this asset, this home that is appreciated in value over their lifetime that they can live in into their retirement years, or they can sell and realize liquidity that they can then use to help fund their retirement. And the reality now is, as we all know, the cost of living is much higher. The cost of real estate is extraordinarily higher. We had statistics that we shared yesterday to our clients about how in 1980, the average home cost about 3 times the average salary, and now it's more than 7 times. And as a result, people have to save and invest for far longer just to enter that real estate market. People are entering the real estate market in their late 30s, and they have fewer years to pay off their mortgage. And they have less hopes of even retiring with a fully paid off mortgage. So it really does put pressure on all of us to find other means for savings and investing beyond that home. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see this real interest and attention towards capital markets as really ultimately an alternative and savings path for all those Canadians who might have already concluded that home ownership is out of reach.
Thanks, Blair. So Laura, what are you seeing? How well are older Canadian investors preparing for retirement, and what needs to be done to get them ready?
So while we talked about Cira, I want to be really clear. The hat that I'm wearing is Canada's hat and not Cira's hat. But the question about vulnerable investors or older adults who are in the market is one that's really, really important. The question I invite everyone to think about before you're talking or assuming anything is, what was the average age of death when this plan, policy, legislative component, whatever it is, what was the average age of death when it was put in? So the average age of death when we created the CPP, the Canada Pension Plan, was 67. So you worked really hard for 65 years, then you had, 2 years at the cabin, and then you died quickly. Right. So that's quite a bit different than we think about things now. The average age of death when we put together the mandatory withdrawals for RRIFs, and I cannot agree enough with what you're saying, the average age was 74. So mandatory RRIF withdrawals at 71, it's okay. Now, by contrast, requiring people to start withdrawing at 71 when they're frankly maybe still be earning money is absolutely counterintuitive. So we really need to be thinking, what's the average age of death when we put that into place? With that same notion, I wanted to pull out 3 things. The first is this: it's not your grandparents' retirement. That house they may or may not have, the chances of them retiring with debt is extremely high. Retiring with mortgage debt is extremely high. Retiring with student debt is actually the new climb, right? We're actually seeing people who are retiring but are still paying off student debt. So this idea that you've saved, you've got your bundle of money in your mattress, or you've put it into your house, plus you've got this 3-legged stool that we talk about, you've got your defined benefits plan, you've been saving things in bonds or something like that. That's not how it is, and we don't need to have it structured longer. So chances of retiring with debt are very, very high. It's not your grandparents' retirement. And part of what that also means is we don't count how we do in aging very effectively. The market basket measure, the consumer price index, are notorious for wildly underestimating seniors' poverty. This is well established. The federal government keeps saying they're going to change it. We're waiting for an announcement. I've been waiting for an announcement. I may be waiting for an announcement until I retire, but it's coming out, right? They're going to change it. But what happens is that when we count things in the consumer price index or that market basket measure, those baskets of goods, we count it based on people in their 30s and early 40s. And it's missing basic things like the cost of care. The most expensive years of your life are the last 2 years of your life now. And that was not the case before. When we put together our health plan in Canada, that plan that we're so proud of, rightly so, the average age of death was 76. And now every single one of those top 10 things that we died from are all chronic conditions. We are living longer, but we're actually not necessarily living more healthily. In fact, we are at the bottom of the OECD for what's called the wealth and health gap, right? So our longevity gap is about 8 years, which means you're going to live with ill health, some kind of comorbidity, for about up to 8 years. This is at a time where we're looking at these massive demographic shifts. Canada this April became what's known as a super aging country. 1 in 5 Canadians are over the age of 65 already. That's okay. But unless we adjust our systems to modify that, in fact, it's great in many ways, but we need to start adjusting and move those 67-year assumptions, 74-year assumptions, 76-year assumptions to the fact that you're living into your mid-80s now. And my kids who are in their early 20s will expect to live to about 100 at least, right? So I really want us to think about what's hidden in seniors' poverty. People will say things like, well, you do have the house, you're asset rich, cash poor, or I see that you've got this bundle of money. Why don't we think about legacy planning? The reality of circumstances is people do need their money for those last 2 years of life and often can't access out of their house effectively or efficiently, or can't pull money easily out of RIFs or TFSAs. Our systems aren't set up for longevity and the cost. Just to give you a sense to close this section, if you're trying to hire somebody that provides 24/7 care with just about a 6-week course in caregiving, I'm not talking a nurse, I'm just talking someone with a basic training. It would be about $300,000 a year for really a very basic person with almost a Red Cross level of competence for a volunteer basis to provide care. I don't know a lot of clients that are really able to sustain $300,000 a year over that 8-year gap. And so advisors and the industry really need to look at those actuarial tables and wake up, because they're not appropriate. The last things that I will just close on that is, yes, financial literacy may have been effective, but that's because we measure financial literacy wrong now, right? We're not including the realities, the modern realities of financial advising and financial advice. And that's the next point. The value of advice is changing. People don't know often how to talk to older people. They may give that everyone's going golfing until they have that heart attack with a cocktail in hand on the 10th green. That's not really what aging mostly is anymore. People don't know how to talk about cognitive impairment. The average amount of time it takes in Canada from the beginning of cognitive impairment due to dementia to a diagnosis is about 7 years. And the very first thing to go is advanced financial reasoning and that risk understanding. And advisors desperately need to understand that the value of their advice is going to actually take care of not just the balance sheet, but the balance of who they are in their life. And that leads to the next point. We have to be really frank and clear about the norms we associate with the family and what conflicts of interest can arise. It's important to have an advisor, and the family advisor is a good and nice idea, as long as we understand that mom and dad, and I'm going to use those terms for the moment, may have very different views, and dad may be speaking a lot and mom may be quiet. And if dad passes away first, as at the moment they still tend to do, 2/3 of older women will change their financial advisor within the first 6 months. The value of financial advice has got to deal with both longevity and who the clients are, and understanding that they are all not part of the same homogenous view. And if you get other generations in there without really good understanding about wealth planning or trusts, and assuming the kids and grandkids are all loving each other and nobody has any drug and alcohol problems and everybody's fine and loving at all times, I don't know, I've never seen one of those families. Maybe they exist somewhere besides television. We need to understand that there's competing interests. And this is true at the ultra high net worth level as much as it is with people who are just struggling. The last piece I would say is that the role of technology and frauds can't be underestimated. And I know that this is going to be discussed more robustly in the course of the day, so I don't want to fall down that point. But just to give you a little bit of a taste, It's true that cybersecurity is incredibly important and becoming more important on a constant basis. But if you make people do 2FA, 3FA, password resets that are constant, requirement of it never using the same password for anything ever, I doubt anyone in this room would be able to manage that, let alone my 89-year-old mother, who does pretty well, but is just about ready to throw her computer out the door because you just can't keep that up. And so the downloading of risk, of cyber risk, onto individual people is not sustainable. And we need that system-based approach. And understanding that financial fraud isn't just a person who's uneducated. It isn't just a person who doesn't have a lot of money. That actually it is perhaps one of the most important things that we can wrestle with today. And I'll just close by saying this summer I got updates from the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and the SEC. And they shared that in the US, not just all fraud, but essentially older adult fraud, not just all fraud, but investment fraud. So narrowing and narrowing, something like $65 billion a year in the US. And they estimate that with AI, it'll go up to $300 billion a year by next year. Now, we don't have great Canadian numbers, and that's the first problem. We don't have great systems dealing with it, which is the second problem. But you can probably assume that we're about 10% of those numbers. And 10% of 300 billion is something that we should all be taking very, very seriously. Good news is, longevity is doing well. We just have to make sure that we're modifying what we do, what we offer, and how we think to match the new realities.
Thanks, Laura. And I just want to pick up on the fraud theme. We are talking about it in more depth, but just from sort of industry and the client's perspectives, I want to give you a moment. Blair?
I'll take just a moment. I agree, fraud is a huge problem. At Wealthsimple, I think between 2022 and 2024, attempted frauds more than tripled. It was just and it's only going in one direction. Laura's right to mention AI. It will get harder and harder. We have whole teams of data scientists, people who are building machine learning models, AI models, fighting fire with fire to stay ahead of the fraud. But it is truly guerrilla warfare every single day. And I think all of industry regulators, it's an area we can all align on to work together to share information better, to share best practices better, to hold each other accountable for raising the bar, because Canadians deserve to be able to rely on their financial institutions to keep their money and their data safe.
Thanks, Blair. Andy?
Not too much to add, but just I would applaud the CBA for taking this on with their scam and fraud coalition with not only the fintech universe, but also enforcement, law enforcement. We're going to join that group as well and weigh in from our part of the ecosystem. It is scary. The OSC shared some stats with us at a recent event that the chart is literally more than a hockey stick. And to Blair's point, it's going to be constant. You're not going to solve this with a Band-Aid solution. I do think this does so speak back to education again, and not to bring up gambling again, but I will anyway. If you're a sports junkie like I am, every sports game, regardless of the sport you watch, every ad in between periods or in between plays is a gambling ad. Imagine if that was financial education and literacy ads instead, because a lot of those are government-owned gambling institutions where the revenue goes to the gambling house. And imagine if we applied some of that money, maybe the profits could be allocated towards educating the public and warning them of these things. And then the other thing is social media, of course. Hit them where they live. A lot of these scams start through the Instagrams and the Facebooks of the world, and people read things and then go down this rabbit hole and get caught up in it, and AI picks up on that. Maybe we should be doing better commercialization of communication. There's great content out there, and we're no lack of advice, but it's very hard for the consumer to engage in that and find it. We need to do a better job of that. So we know the what and the why. We need to work better on the how.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Blair, I just want to check back with you. We heard a bit about, you know, how Wealthsimple started and who is interested there, but just do you have anything else to say about, well, because the growth in the DIY sector and your firm specifically is notable, do you have anything more to add about your clients, who they are, why you're winning market share, and if there's anything you think needs to be done to better serve investors in the DIY platform?
And proud to say that we've got 500,000 clients here in Alberta. This is a really important place for us. We've got a large team, almost 100 Albertans work at Wealthsimple, and we're really proud to be, and continue to invest in Calgary and the Alberta financial system. I think the big thing that Wealthsimple keeps coming back to is to really putting our clients first in everything that we do. And our clients are really active. They give us feedback all the time about what they see, what they like, what they want us to do, what they don't want us to do. And we're just constantly motivated to make our products better, because we kind of believe that if we can offer products that provide responsible access to more asset classes, the ability to do things like trade shares fractionally, so you don't have to buy that really expensive share in a full share unit, and instead can buy a fractional interest in the share. If we can offer things like 24/5 and eventually 24/7 trading of all assets, that meets clients where they're at when it comes to their life and their ability to access and do their investments at times that work for them. And then ultimately keep our fees as low as possible, so that people can have more of their money actually put to work in investments. Those are the things that matter the most. We just yesterday announced that we're going to enable clients to offer gold, buy and sell gold on our platform, and we're proud to be working with Silver Gold Bull, which is a company based here in Calgary, and they offer a fantastic 24/7 system for trading gold. It's not constrained by trading hours Monday to Friday. It's something that people can buy evenings, weekends, and as geopolitical events and other events happen on a 24/7 news cycle, it's really fantastic that our clients can access that asset class directly in a low-cost way when they want it and how they want it. So we do think it's really important to be responsive to the needs of our clients and constantly be reinvesting and making our products better, so that they can do with them what they want. And that's really been the heart of our strategy, and it continues to work well.
Okay, thanks for that. Andy, I want to know, how is the CIMA membership preparing for the expected $1 to $2 trillion that is expected to move from baby boomers to millennials and Gen X in the next decade or two? Are they ready for these younger investors and their investing preferences?
Big question. First of all, let's put a little context around this. I've been around the industry for 36 years now. I started when I was 12. But I've heard about this big wealth transference for the last 20 of those years for sure. And just put a bit of context on this, right? So to Blair's point about living older and home ownership and those things, you're 40 or 50 or even maybe later now when your parents may pass away. Maybe you didn't save as much as you could because of the exact issues Blair talked about, approaching your house and other obligations you have in your life, and you get this inheritance. First of all, it's already invested in assets, in a home maybe. So there's, probate, there's taxes to pay on that home. If it's in the markets, it's probably going to get sold to some degree. Again, pay taxes. Maybe you've always wanted to renovate your home. When you get that inheritance, you take some of that money out of the market, you go and spend it on home improvements. Maybe you wanted to do the trip that you've been saving for and you haven't been able to do it, so you spend money there. God forbid you go buy the Porsche that you always wanted because you got the big inheritance. So it actually could come out of the markets. This is not a boon to the markets to grow. Most of this is already invested in some type of financial asset. So let's step away from that perspective and say this may not be great if it happens in a quick fashion. We've talked about, obviously, the younger generation, and Blair's talked about how they deliver on excellence in their advice channel. I think back to meeting younger investors where they are, They want more digital tools. I'm really encouraged by the OEO paper that just came out and this non-tailored advice. This is not SEMA's opinion, but my opinion would be that we made a mistake by having OEO without any advice at all in the origins of it. I think, there's so many great tools now, not only here in Canada, but globally. There's some really fantastic platforms that are nudging clients, personalizing their experience. When they sign into the portal in the morning, it feels very personable. And if they want to talk to an advisor, they still can. So I think that's where younger Canadians want to be met. People have busy lives. Think of your own life outside of your work life. You're running on that proverbial treadmill every day. So, there's no advisors meeting at the kitchen table anymore at 5 o'clock, getting in the way of dinner. It's just not physically possible anymore. So leveraging technology is massive, and I think we should be encouraging more use of that. There's some great young fintech organizations in Canada that should be supported and encouraged through capital formation and the other things that were raised this morning to continue to do that and not only sell their services here and make Canada a destination, but also globally as well.
Okay, thanks.
So just an anecdotal comment. Probably many of you now have like smartwatches on your wrist that tell you to stand up if you've been sitting too long, or tell you it's your bedtime, time to go to sleep. You're giving this biometric feedback all day long about how you can be a bit more healthy and active, and yet we've really shied away from similar sorts of nudges for financial investors. And I think at that level of personalized, what's the financial equivalent of biometric feedback that we can all put to work to become smarter and better at our investing habits.
Can I make one quick comment on influencers as well?
You bet.
So the same study that Lynn mentioned, Polera, we found that influencers, Canadians, and these are investors, these are not Canadian public, these are Canadian investors being surveyed, but 1/3 listened to influencers in some way, shape, or form. Interestingly though, only 7%, which is still a big number, which you should be very cautious about, actually take action from that. So, hearing about these things, I think last week there was an event in Ontario, an actual influencer was presenting, and supposedly I wasn't there, but supposedly he said he's making more money now as a formerly registered advisor, as a influencer, because he doesn't have to deal with all the regulation. That's a concerning moment for me, and I think for us. I'm not saying that it's untoward or fraudulent advice, but you need to be a registered individual to be giving advice in this country and every other country. So we need to deal with those things as well.
To your point, that report said that investors were going there, young investors were going there because it's free. That was the number one reason. And because they were more relatable, because they had some control. So just out of curiosity, Blair, have you guys got any ideas about how to get eyeballs away from the unregulated onto the regulated?
I mean, I think that what you commented, it's free. It's also accessible 24/7. Think about if you had an advisor, like, well, I'd like to talk to my advisor, and I call them up and say, well, can we make an appointment? Well, how about a week Tuesday for 30 minutes? Come down to my office and we'll sit down, we'll talk about it. It's like, wait a second, I got on my phone, like right now, or in ChatGPT right now, I can like enter in a prompt and get immediate feedback. That's the competition. That's which is a week Tuesday for driving to someone's office or instantaneously on your phone.
Yeah.
Which path are you going to go down? And so I think the challenge for us who are operating within the regulated environment is to make sure that our alternatives are just as accessible and just as high value as the influencer examples, which are at your fingertips all the time. That's really, I think, the onus that we have to put on ourselves to meet them, but with that level of convenience.
Okay. Well, you've heard the challenge. Laura, before we go to questions from the audience, do you have any thoughts on this wealth transition or finfluencers?
So I think it's really important for us to remember and audit our own biases as we're either running plans or giving advice, or for that matter, as investors ourselves, to think about what we imagine longevity and aging is going to look like. And then shake it up a little bit. People don't die or get sick all in order. The oldest person doesn't necessarily die first. The young person, God forbid, could have an accident and have some type of acquired brain injury. And so I want us to challenge by thinking about longevity and thinking about what's likely. And that means often moving out those assumptive registrars from about 80 or 85 well into 100 and 105, but also allow people to have the conversations and get informations from a wide variety of sources. I think in so many ways, it's really a social work question that we need to get better at. We need to be able to ask people things that are sometimes fun. What would you imagine or like to do? And then ourselves be informed by what real costs are and real opportunities are, and be able to ask people, no matter what their age, what would you do if? And those what would you do ifs are good conversation starters, again, no matter what the ages are. So influencers are important, but also influencers in just different kinds of life and well-being. That know your client is a process and an invitation. It's not a checklist.
That's very good. Every regulator in this room applauds you. It's not a checklist, it's a process. Okay, I think we're ready to go to audience questions. Okay, there are instances when transfers of accounts can take longer and be reported at a later date than when received. What are regulators doing to ensure transfers are processed transparently and in a timely manner? Gee, Blair, did you send this question?
Funny you should ask.
I don't know who I planted this question with, but
He'll pay you later.
oh yeah. I mean, Wealthsimple has been all very vocal about this. Many of you are probably sick of hearing us talk about transfers, but it does seem like there are some movements going on. I mean, the transfer of accounts, basically the movement of your investment portfolio from dealer A to dealer B is not a good system in Canada. Maybe it's actually okay between two CIRO-regulated dealers who are both using the ATON system, but accounts also come from life insurance companies, they come from other workplace sources, they come from federally regulated institutions, provincially regulated institutions, and it is a mess of complexity to get your accounts from point A to point B. It's very time consuming, it's very manual, it's very expensive, and it's really to the detriment of all Canadians. Because if you're trying to move your investments and it takes months to do so, it almost feels like it's not worth it. So the good thing is I think that there will be, there has been really positive statements from the CSA and CIRO more recently about setting in place real modernization and improvements and standardization of account transfers. I think that open banking, which has been long talked about, and perhaps we're soon on the precipice of seeing come live, will be another catalyst for better data sharing between institutions to move assets around in a secure and safe way that's for the benefit of Canadians. And that we hope that eventually we'll also see movement, for example, at the federal level, to look at where the fees are also being incurred, because it's not just the significant opportunity cost if your money is uninvested while your assets are moving, but there's also just like the raw cost. If you have 3 registered accounts at a big bank securities firm right now and you want to move those to Wealthsimple, you're paying $750 in fees, no matter what the balance is on those accounts. It's outrageous. You could have $100 in each of those accounts. You're going to cash them out into cash, move the cash, and instead pay capital gains. Not an acceptable outcome for Canadians, and it does seem as though policymakers, when they look at how to make our financial system more competitive, more fair for Canadians, this is getting the attention it deserves, but more work to be done for sure.
Well, and Laura, you're allowed to put your CIRO director's hat on because CIRO has done a very good white paper on this topic of account transfers. Did you want to speak to that?
Well, board members, and I know I'm not the only board member in the audience right now, are always happy to receive compliments about the work they do. And while I would never dream of speaking on behalf of CIRO, what I will say is this. These are front and center questions about making the systems work better for people, making the systems work better for the folks who are regulated, and making our processes smoother. So I will say that. I'll also say that these are the right conversations to be having, and that our capital markets need modern engaged, understandable regulation, and that these discussions are critical for that. I do think that as we're thinking about, and I'm putting my my Canny hat back on firmly on my head. When we're thinking about what's around the corner, I'll just ask us to consider the longevity lens of 6 and even soon 7 generations in play. We already have 5 and 6 generations in the workforce. So this idea is not just retirement, not retirement is an old-fashioned notion. The reality is we actually have to think about people who are getting married in their 90s, people who are going to school again in their 60s, people who are starting up and looking for capital, in their 80s and 70s, and taking away and challenging some of our old ideas of what you're supposed to do at what time. It's a great opportunity for us to be refreshing it and do a little bit of an ageism audit of our own materials, systems, and thinking. The good news is it opens up much more in terms of a client base if you challenge and get rid of those ideas that don't fit.
So again, any advisors in the room, you hearing this advice? Just bringing it back to account transfers, I just have a couple things to say. The paper is on CIRO's website, and it is very complicated topic. It crosses jurisdictional lines, which makes it tougher, right? We as securities regulators don't have total control over the process. And also of note in that paper, there's a little RFQ request like, hey, fintech folks, if you have an idea on a system that would work to help solve the account transfer problem, please submit your proposal. So I just thought I'd give that a little light.
Can I make just 2 comments on this one?
You bet.
We have FundServe on the fund side, and we have ATON, as Blair mentioned. Mandatory is not a word we probably use enough. It's kind of best practice or guidelines, and if we make those use mandatory, it makes the process a lot easier. The other thing I would encourage everyone in the room, not just on this topic, but it's a prime example, is we should step back all the time and look at the lens of the client. I know we want better investor outcomes. We talk about investor protection, but these are all client experiences. If they're paying more fees, they're burdened by the process, they're delayed, they're impacted by fraud. These are all client issues. If you put that lens on and just take an extra moment to either talk to somebody, talk to client advocacy groups, JP's here somewhere right there, find out more from the client lens, I think we can solve things a lot quicker and probably more efficiently. Because a lot of times we talk about the ecosystems and the burdens we have operationally, technology-wise, or regulation-wise, but I think we need to step back a little bit more and look more at the client lens on some of these issues.
We're trying, and that's why you're seeing a proliferation of investor surveys, because this is the way that we have found to actually talk to people. But yeah, good point. So the next question is, as Andy mentioned, kudos Andy, there's no financial literacy education mandated at the federal provincial level, given that schools are not required to offer financial literacy course. What suggestions do we have for educating the next generation in this area?
So I mentioned some of these already. First of all, I don't think we can put this burden on teachers. Teachers and school boards have said they have a burden already of trying to manage their day. They don't necessarily have great financial literacy themselves. They admitted that. It's not my comment. They say that. They're not sure they can be the teacher of this. I can just give you 2 experiences. One in kind of developing Asia. Their associations, trade associations across their industry, and the federal governments have worked together to deliver this in schools. That means resources and costs have to be shared and burdened by the industry. In South America, trade association peers of mine, they're literally going to every school. I don't think we can do that in a country the size of Canada, not just the scale, but also the geography. So how can we address this? I talked about this before. We can use social media. Teams are on social media all the time. There's other tools you can use. There's some great tools out there now through gamification kind of playing in the stock market, to understand those risks. By the way, young men and young women learn differently in that context, so you need to build the technology to support that. So as an industry, there's no excuse for us not to put money towards this and find a better platform with a capital P to deliver this across the country. We've done a study on all the jurisdictions. Every province is different when they teach it. Is it mandatory tests or not? Most of it's, compound interest, mortgages, credit cards. It doesn't get into the investing landscape. Just teaching the power of compounding alone, if you think of the gambling mindset, to see that chart go up over your, the old mountain chart, put $50 away every paycheck. It's amazing what you have at the end of the day. And to Lynn's points, if they're going to live till they're 80 or 85, putting away $50 on every paycheck when you start at 25 could be a substantial amount of money in the long run. So.
I'm going to piggyback back to the beginning, Andy, when you made some positive comments. It's not all doom and gloom. I would say I have a 12-year-old daughter who is in grade 7 now, but when she was in grade 6, she went through a whole financial literacy module in her school, and it was excellent. I was very impressed. I thought she learned a lot. She had a lot of great questions. So it's not all terrible. I think we can build on something that is there. I'm also a techno optimist in this area. I do think that things like AI will allow to start to see much more personalized, curated, dynamic training and ability for kids to learn by doing versus just like, here's a curriculum, read these materials, take this quiz. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. As you say, boys and girls learn differently. I think that wealthy families and lower income families probably have different financial literacy needs as well. The more we can get more tailored on this sort of stuff, I actually think we'll better serve entire Canadian market.
And if I could add to that, I can't disagree more, but I don't remember what I did last week sometimes, let alone what I did in grade 10, although I do still remember the general quadratic equation, but not really what I use it for. And joking aside, we need to get those foundational pieces in, absolutely. But we also need just-in-time information in a way that makes it interesting and engaging and doesn't have negative assumptions. So if I am thinking about age and stage, I probably have different financial literacy information I'm going to need if I'm going to be able to have some benefits. You know what? Should I take CPP at 60, 65, 70? What are my choices about TFSAs? And as a person, I don't know, there's a lot of acronyms and letters. What do I do about that? And so just building in some of those prompts. I'm a huge fan of automatic tax inclusion, which is a great stride that we're getting. Anything auto is great. You can always modify it, but people don't qualify. So you need to get them in to begin with. But even those like tax prompts or any of your financial planning prompts with either what ifs or what would you do's, those types of mini learning opportunities are critical. So we can build on those foundational pieces that we should have had as kids.
Super good ideas. Yeah. Thanks, Laura. And thank you, Andy, Blair, Laura. Really interesting conversation today. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.